Sean, thank you so much for joining me today. Can you describe the immediate response efforts following the tornado in Iowa?
Yeah, absolutely, Kyle. Great to be with you. Great to see you. Yeah, so there was an F4 tornado that went through Greenfield, Iowa. It was devastating, like literally cut a path right through the center of town. And this one was particularly just so destructive. I mean, the images and pictures from the ground. We had cry responders, cry volunteers who have been trained with us. We're close in that community. Actually, one who was from that community grew up there. These people just stood up and said, "Hey, I'm willing to respond." And they got on the ground, made some assessments, had some relationships. We partnered with Immanuel Lutheran Church. They're on the ground. They're doing great things. Buffalo Wild Wings came out. And we started doing food distribution, doing work orders. And one of the things we do with tornadoes as well is just, picking up the pieces, finding personal belonging, wedding rings, pictures, keepsakes, and then walking with people spiritually, emotionally, as we're serving their practical needs of really their worst hour in their life.
Talk to me about the first steps that you take, upon arriving in an affected area. How do you go about assessing the needs and kind of getting those resources mobilized, like you're talking about?
Yeah, well, first of all, you have to have a network. You have to have a network of relationships. We have cry trained responders all over the country and internationally as well. And without these people standing up and willing to get in there, particularly with a tornado, hurricanes, you have more time. You know what's coming. Tornadoes, they just kind of spin up. You kind of have the heads up that there's bad weather, and so we're watching. But it takes time to roll equipment and get people in there. And we were able to get on the ground relatively quickly, within about a day. And we go in and, we begin to look at what the needs are. And, we're kind of familiar with what the needs are with people who have been through tornadic activity, a tornado event. Obviously, power is out, so people need food, they need water. We got to do debris removal. And so, we're looking for a man of peace on the ground. We're looking for a connection with somebody in the community who knows the community, knows the people of the community. Usually a church fits that very well. And then they can also host our teams. So we kind of find that. We find our man of peace. We work out logistics. We know we have a place for volunteers to sleep. Meanwhile, we're rolling our equipment from Virginia, debris removal equipment, mobile kitchens, things along those lines out there. That takes a little time to get. And then usually through the church, their network, they know the people who have been impacted. And so we'll go out to their households and begin to find out what their needs are. And then whatever resources we have, we'll begin to connect them with them.
So in terms of coordinating with local authorities or other emergency services providers or relief organizations, how do you coordinate your efforts for maximum impact in those areas?
Yeah, there's really never just any one way. First and foremost, we're a ministry, so we're a praying community, and we're just praying that, hey, God, we know you want to help these people. So who are the people that we need to connect with to be effective? And a lot of times it's just following the relationships. In this case, there was a cry responder out there who, like I said, she grew up in that community. She knew contacts and pastors in that area, and she just reached out to them. And then those people have relationships with people in their community who have been impacted. And it just cuts the time down, helps us to get right to the people who really need it. Sometimes we work through, emergency management, sometimes through the fire department, the mayor, but more times than not, it's usually the church community that rises up, that have the heart to help. Sometimes it's even more efficient because you can kind of bypass some of the red tape and get right into the places where people aren't really getting the help.
Talk to me a little bit about how people's hearts are more open to the gospel when you are in that crisis situation. Do you have any stories or experiences that you could share?
Yeah, first and foremost, just think of, a time of crisis or a time of pain or, personal challenge in your own life. It's like, when the pressure's on or we're hurting or, maybe we're going through a physical challenge, our prayer life kind of goes from a 1 to a 10. And so that's kind of what we see in the midst of crisis. Even in the Bible, You have stories of where, Jesus healed people. And it's funny when you look at those examples, like the desperation of, the four friends with the paralytic guy. There was this desperate act that they lowered him through the roof and Jesus touched them and healed them. Or blind Bartimaeus, who, Jesus, son of David, and he pressed in that moment. And, when the pressure's on, or we're going through crisis, or maybe we've lost everything, or even loved ones, we're desperate. We need the answers. And it's really not a time to hide God in the broom closet. This is a time when people are really, really searching and genuinely crying out to God, like, God, how did this happen? Why did this happen? And, I'm not one who believes that, God does these things, meaning like he causes sickness, disease, and disasters, but he sure does work in the midst of it. And we have seen this happen all around the world. I mean, I could tell you stories all day long of how we have seen this. And, it is an absolute honor and privilege to be entrusted by the Lord to be there and to step into somebody's worst moment of pain. I got one story in particular. I remember there was this tornado outbreak in Cleveland, Tennessee, and this was probably back in 2015, 16. It could have been even earlier than that. The church, the morning that this tornado happened, the next morning after, they called me up and they said, "Hey, we know about Cry. We don't know what to do. Our community is devastated. We got people who have been impacted. Would you come help?" And that's something we often do. We'll come in. We're not part of the community. We're not staying in the community, but we want to see a long-lasting impact. So we'll partner with the church. We'll help stand things up and, let the church really shine in the midst of the disaster, set up a point of distribution. And anyway, we went out. They said, "Hey, we need you to go out to this one family. There's been multiple deaths out there, and this guy's really hurting." And so we went out there and pulled up to the front of this house, and it was just a foundation. I mean, it was just absolute devastation. There was nothing left of this house, just a foundation. We pulled up. I had untrained volunteers with me in the van because the Cry responders hadn't showed up. This was the first day, but I got there quickly because we were based in Nashville at that point. And so I just told the volunteers, I said, "Hey, you guys aren't trained, but there's definitely things you want to say and definitely things you don't want to say something in terms of a loss. Like, God just needed another little angel. Don't say that. Just say, I don't understand. I can't imagine what you're going through. I'm so sorry. I'm praying for you." Things along those lines. Just be compassionate. Don't tell your own stories of trauma and grief. It's about them in this moment. And so that was their coaching, like in 5 minutes. And I walk up and there's this guy, Mikey, and he's standing there in front of the house. And he tells me the story about how there was this, he kind of lives in the hollers of, Tennessee. And he heard this noise. The power was off all day, and he just wanted to get a bucket of water from the downspout because he was on, well water, and it takes electricity to run the wells. He wanted to get a 5-gallon bucket of water to flush his toilet. So 7 o'clock at night, the kids had went to bed. His wife was upstairs, and his sister was visiting from Wisconsin. So Mikey fills up his bucket, and he's going to walk back in the house, and suddenly he hears, and there's this tornado. He had no time to see it or hear it because it was behind the hill. And it popped over the hill into his front yard. And by the time he got on his second floor staircase up to the second floor, the walls pulled out. He was thrown into the backyard, and then the two children. He had 3 children, and it was maybe a 10-year-old girl, 7-year-old boy. They were thrown out the second story, and somehow they landed underneath the deck in the backyard. It makes no sense. And then the sister, the wife was thrown out. She broke her hip. And then the sister, visiting from Wisconsin, she ran in. She heard the tornado, and they had a 6-month-old baby. Baby Chase was the baby's name. And she grabbed the baby, and they were thrown about 300 yards, and they were both killed on impact. She was horribly disfigured, but the baby was kind of preserved. Baby died, but the baby wasn't mangled like she was. And so he's telling us this story. I mean, can you imagine that, standing there in somebody's driveway and hearing this story? What can words do at that moment? We need to bring the comfort of God, the love of God, the power of the Holy Spirit, the comfort of the Holy Spirit. And I'm just listening to the story, and he just leans over and he just begins to wail. I mean, he said, "I'm so sorry." And he just begins to wail and grieve at the loss of your baby. What can words do at that moment? And I saw this demonstration of worship that I've never seen before. Mikey says, I just need a second. And he stretches himself out on the front lawn and he just begins to worship God in that moment. I've never seen a purer, more sacrificial example of worship in this moment. I was completely undone. The team was undone. I just had to go walk away for 20 minutes and just catch my breath. This was hard. And so anyway, we regathered, the team started going, and we started picking things up and collecting belongings for him. And here's the neat story. And it sounds so simple, but it's so beautiful. What ended up happening, we cleaned up for him. It starts to get dark. And I said, Mikey, is there anything else we can do for you? He goes, matter of fact, there is. There's one more thing you can do. You know, a couple of weeks ago, my wife and I and the kids, it was just this beautiful day, beautiful spring day, and we decided to have a picnic in the backyard. And we decided to put paint on our bare feet on the back steps. First, it was my foot, then my wife's foot, then my daughter's foot, then my son's foot, and then baby Chase's footprint on the bottom step. Well, when the tornado came, it ripped the step off the back of the house. And he goes, I found the step over in the neighbor's yard, but baby Chase's step with his footprint, I can't find it anywhere. I've been searching all day. Can you find the step? Now, I would never tell anybody to do this. Don't make promises you can't keep. But it was really under the unction of God. I said, Mikey, that's why we're here, and we're going to find that step. Like the words just bubbled out of my mouth. We all grabbed hands. We stood in a circle. We prayed. And guys, you got to remember, this tornado was on the ground for 35 miles, a half mile wide. So it was just absolute devastation. There wasn't a leaf on any tree, transformers, power line. It was terrible. We prayed a 10-second prayer. Holy Spirit, could you help us find this step? I mean, and suddenly this one guy in the group runs from the prayer circle, dives into this pile of stuff. You just see his feet like dangling out as he's upside down in this pile of debris. And he comes out of the top and he goes, I got the step. I got the step. You know, everybody's crying. We handed it to Mikey, and there was just closure in his heart in that moment. And so what ends up happening is a local artist ended up taking that staircase, suspended it kind of like in midair, touching the ground, and he put sand around the bottom of it and curtains for the memorial for the whole community to come together and grieve and, you know, just be with this family. And they put sand and flowers in the bottom, and they put a baby's footprint in the sand around that. And that's what people saw when they walked into this memorial. Guys, I'm telling you, there's something that everyone can do in the midst of crisis. Simply if you put your hand up and you say, hey, I'm willing, I want to help. You're moved with compassion. We've seen this all around the world, and that's just a small little story of things that we've seen.
Amazing, Sean. And so how can people get involved if they want to serve in this way, or if they're looking for a ministry to connect with? What's the first step that you could take?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, just for the protection of our volunteers and for the people that we're serving, we do an online training that you can go through in about 8 to 10 hours. You can take the training online at criout.com. And you can take the training. You can work at your own pace. And it really shares the heart, the vision, a lot of this crazy stories of what we've seen God do over the years. And it gives you some practical equipping so you know what to do in the time of crisis. And then you're on our roster. You're a part of our, responder teams. And then, you know, when a disaster happens, you know, you pay your own way and, you know, you sign up for the deployment. And then we mobilize you, whether that's nationally or internationally. We help with all the logistics and the arrangements of that. And then, you know, I'm telling you, when you come in and serve in somebody's worst moment, it's such an honor. It's such a gift to be able to walk with people in that moment. I know it's not for everybody, but I want to say this. There is a place for everybody to serve in the midst of crisis and disaster.
Such a need, and it's really the church's time to rise up and meet those needs. We shouldn't be depending on the government or other individuals. The church should really take the lead, and kudos to you for mobilizing the church in that way. Anything else that you want to say before we close?
Yeah, I love what I do. I love this thing that we do, and just feel honored to be able to do it. Just some stats just from on the ground in Greenfield. You know, all we had was a dozen responders for this. Tornadoes, they happen so quick, and then they're over real quick because when your house is destroyed, you can't live there. And so people relocate. So it's really just only a couple of day thing. But about 750 people came through the food lines. We served over 600 meals, about 5 days on the ground, 500 cumulative man hours that we had. But think about that for a moment. Just in basically like a long weekend, people who just said, hey, I want to come, I want to serve. We got to touch the lives of 750 people to demonstrate the love of God. I mean, it doesn't get any easier than that. And it's at a moment where people are really, really open. And so if you have a heart for evangelism, you have a heart for missions, guys, this is a mission field. So I really encourage you to sign up. We need you. And I'll tell you, I'll warn you, it's addicting. To see God move through your life just when you take, your weak yes and whatever resources or whatever giftings. And, we do mobile kitchens. We were on the ground in Ukraine on day 5 of the war. We're in northern Iraq with the ISIS crisis. We go all over the world and do this. And so really there's a place for everybody. Don't disqualify yourself. I heard this saying one time, Kyle, it's so easy to take personal inventory of our weaknesses, to look at our bank account, to look at our work situation. Our boss will never go off, but we so easily disqualify ourselves from the personal and great exploits that God has set apart for us. And so don't disqualify yourself. You can do this.
That's what I love about Pride too. There's a place for everyone, and the needs are so great, especially in crisis. And so when these situations occur, if you're ready and prepared and trained, you can immediately join a team and kind of watch what God does.
Yeah. And then you got this responder family. This is one of the things that happen. You get this responder family, all of we call them cry buddies. Whether you're come to a live training, we do all sorts of live training events and advanced trainings. But these people, when you're out on deployment with somebody and you're faced with this external threat, maybe it's this massive hurricane or we're in a war situation, the relationships that are forged in the midst of adversity and this threat, and then seeing God move, these incredible highs and these incredible lows, dealing with people who have lost everything. Maybe they've lost their city. You'll walk away with lifelong relationships and friends. It's just truly incredible.
Amazing work, Sean. Thank you so much for your time today, and talking again soon.
Absolutely. Love what you do. Love Thrive News. Keep going, buddy.
Thanks, Sean.